One of the things that occurs to me now that you do have all these hits over the years is that fans want to hear them. And you've talked before, Tom, about not wanting to just be a jukebox or I suppose a nostalgia act of just getting up there and playing the hits. And you've got this killer new record, which would make sense that you'd want to be playing. At the same time, people are paying a lot of money to see you. How do you navigate those waters between whether you're going to play the back catalog or not?
It's a constant challenge. I mean, it's a funny kind of burden because you're so happy that you've had that many successful songs, and it's only natural that a large part of the audience wants to hear those songs because some of them are their favorite songs or they wouldn't have come. Right. You still, though, if you only do that, you're going to become bored and kind of a parody of yourself. So that is a scary thing to me, you know, especially going into my 60s, and I still feel like I have stuff to say and records that I want people to be aware of. I don't want to do that. I wouldn't ever want to do that, really, but I always try to put new songs in. I even get into debates about which old songs we'll play. You know, like, well, you have played this one, and you know, we'll do that. Like, well, we have huge lists and lists and lists of songs, and we'd look to it and say, well, let's try. We haven't done this one in a while. Let's try and see what that one sounds like. And there's a lot of songs on albums that were certainly worthy of playing. They weren't the single, but they're worthy of playing. So I wish I had a really pat answer for that, but I don't. I just have to go sit down every day and try to figure out some kind of program that will get the job done out there.
Are there any of your hits? I mean, you don't have to name it if it's too difficult to out your babies this way, but is there a song that comes to mind that you're really just sick of playing, that you just don't want to play anymore?
Well, maybe on different days that would be a different answer. It's funny because you might not think that you're that interested in playing it, but all of a sudden you play it and you just see thousands and thousands of smiles, you know, and you just hear this roar of elation from people, and suddenly you're quite happy singing it, you know. But there has to be new, you know, that's the thing, there has to be new. If you want to keep this music alive, you want to keep any music alive, there's got to be new stuff to keep it moving forward. Now, if you don't have anything new that's good, you'd better to not play that, or better not. So I'm not from the school of going out and giving them an entire 2 hours of stuff they haven't heard before. Right. I mean, I guess I could call myself a very, you know, on-the-point artist for doing that. You know, I could make an artistic argument for that, but I don't think anybody come back next time, you know, because we're all there to have fun. I mean, we're playing a hockey rink because we're really popular.
How much do awards, how much does recognition mean to you? I mean, this year you received the ASCAP, American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers Founders Award. Did that mean a lot to you as a songwriter?
Because it was from my peers, it was quite nice. I think when you start to get older, those things mean more than they did when we were young, you know, where we used to just blow it off or laugh at it. It's quite nice, but it's nothing to aspire to. You don't want to aspire to win awards. I mean, awards for art, come on, you know, it's a silly thing. I mean, they're good for the business, you know. They raise awareness for the business, like the Oscars or the Grammys. They're good for the business, but you can't really say one piece of art is better than another.
What about
It's
legacy?
subjective, you
What
know.
about legacy, Tom? I mean, you're prolific. Your canon is so rich in terms of the songs you write. We talked about Dylan saying you're this legendary poet. You don't always get mentioned when people are talking about some of your iconic contemporaries like Bob Dylan or Neil Young or Paul Simon as being one of these legendary songwriters. Does that bother you?
No, I haven't had time to be bothered. I'm busy. I'd love to be in the conversation, but I don't see myself as Bob Dylan. You know, who the hell's Bob Dylan? That's, I mean, Shakespeare pales in comparison to Bob Dylan in my book. I'm doing the best I can. You know, you can't say I didn't try really hard, because I'm trying really hard to be good. I don't think, do I always hit what I was shooting for? No. There's no great artist that hasn't done some real shit, But you have to do that to maybe hit where, to hit the stuff you're trying to hit. It's an ongoing challenge, but it's a really enjoyable one. And something I'm still pulled to. I love being there and having, there's just air between the speakers, and then suddenly there's something there. And how do we make this really good? It's a great little puzzle to work out. And I'm just glad to have a job, to be honest. I mean, I'm glad, I would have been glad to just be able to pay my rent and have a working automobile, which is a lot.
Seriously, though?
Well, look.
Because you work really hard. A guy who works as hard as you have and tours and doesn't clearly wants to gain something from that beyond paying the rent, right? I mean, materially, you must like...
Well, I've never complained about that, but it's never been my motivation. It's never been my motivation. The money that comes with the success and all is great, and that's probably all that you think it is, but it's less than you think it is too. It's not going to work out your life for you, and it's not going to, the cliches usually have some basic truth to them, but I'm not knocking that. Of course, I'm very grateful, very blessed, and never take it for granted. But that isn't, if that were what was driving me, I would have stopped. I'm doing this, for the music, period. And to hang around with my friends and play music with them.
I want to pick up on, you were just talking about doing things for the love of the music, and if you don't mind, I want you to take me back just for a few moments. It's ironic, I think, that the first single of this record is called American Dream Plan B, because from the outside, you almost seem like the guy who's lived American Dream Plan A. But you grew up in Florida, not in the best circumstances. You described your early relationship with your father as being abusive, both physically and mentally. Music famously became your savior. That feels like a cliche to say, well, music was the escape. What was it about music that so allowed you an outlet, Tom?
Well, by looking back at it, at the time, I don't think I knew anything other than I really liked this. It was as primal as that. I just, long before I even thought of playing anything or trying to perform music, I really loved to listen to it. And I kind of escaped into that world of just listening very intently to these records. Looking back, I think it was probably a safe place mentally for a really abused child, that was probably what was going on. But I'd kind of always thought, I can kind of trace back to the age of 9 or 10 being really interested in the radio and the rock and rollers and thinking that was a pretty cool thing. But I didn't even dream that I would do that for a long time. So yeah, I think I have to kind of look at it in perspective. Looking back, I think that's probably was part of it. That was something that was mine, and it belonged to me, and no one else really had anything to do with it. You didn't find other 10-year-olds that were really into records. That they just weren't. So I'm still a huge music fan. I'm a big fan of music, and I love to listen to it. So yeah, I don't know. That's as good an answer as I
There's
can
a
give
moment
you.
when you're a kid when you meet Elvis. That's a pivotal moment. You see the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in '64.
Yeah.
What was it that you were seeing in those artists that fueled the inspiration?
Well, Elvis was like before the Beatles. My picture of Elvis was the American dream. I mean, this was a kid from the South who had broken all the rules, had become his own man and sort of looked like he did, whatever he wanted, whether adults liked it or not. That was kind of the picture I had. But that didn't look like something you could be to me, And to be Elvis, no one's ever pulled that off. I mean, you'd have to be Elvis. You'd have to look like that for one thing, and you'd have to, orchestras would have to come out of the shrubbery and appear on the beach. Like that just doesn't happen. But the Beatles, that looked like something that could be done to me. Like, these people look like they're self-contained. They're making music that they wrote themselves, and the music's all there on the stage. They're playing it, and they look like they're really good friends, and they're having a lot of fun. And I'll bet they're not worried about Brad either, And of course, they were so absolutely genius, like they were so good even in '64 that it seemed like really hard to ever reach that kind of musicianship. But then you saw the Stones come on there not much long after that, and you went, that I can do. I can do that. And
What was it that you saw in the Stones that you thought, I can do that?
well, they were grittier, It was raw. They were playing blues in this really energetic kind of raw way, but it wasn't complicated. There wasn't a lot of beautiful harmony involved. This was our view of, it was sort of my punk music. It was like, that can be done, And apparently, tens of thousands of American musicians had the same thought at the same time. You won't meet anyone my age that's playing that didn't have that thought at that time. So you literally would hear this music coming out of garages as you drove around town. This little town in Gainesville, we must have had 50, 60 bands. I mean, there were so many bands and so many places to play. It was a great time, Now, if you're a band, it's really tough to find places to work or places to play. It's changed so much, I remember when we were a working band, like when Mudcrutch was just a working band, like we had to work all the time in order to eat, And disco suddenly changed over to cats that just played records.
Right.
And the bands were out of work. And we were so insulted, like, what? You mean we've been we've been fired for a guy that plays records, But that was the first wake-up call, to, wow, there's a lot of gigs being taken away. And if you want to keep working, you're going to have to get better and better and better.
It's an amazing story with you, because on the one hand, you're this kid who's had a really difficult childhood. You're abused by your father. And on the other hand, by your teens, you have this amazing confidence. I mean, I got to tell you, one of my favorite stories, music stories of all time, is this idea of you as a teenager with the Mudcrutch tapes, getting in a car and driving from Florida to Los Angeles to play this stuff. I mean, partly what I love about it is it's outrageous. It was like, where does this guy get off thinking he's going to walk into...
I was very romantic, I probably still am to some degree. A lot of that's been beaten out of me, but I was very romantic. I did not see why I couldn't walk in the door, play them a tape, and suddenly be, signed up and on my way. Didn't, I thought I had the music. So in a way that worked.
It's romantic, but it's also confident.
Yeah,
You got to be confident to take that road trip and walk into those offices. Where did that come from?
I don't know. Sometimes I look back at this and go, God, you had a lot of nerve, But I always felt like if you give me the shot, I can do it, And I don't think when I came out, even when we signed to Shelter, I don't think we were ready, I think we thought we were ready, but I wasn't there yet, I was writing songs, they were good enough to attract people into one. If it hadn't been for Denny Cordell, who said, wait a minute, we're not making a record right away. We're going to take time. We're going to get used to playing in studios. You're going to spend all your time learning how to write songs. And I'm going to expose you to lots of people and lots of records. In those days, you only knew the records you owned, really. You only knew them really well. I didn't have the money to have a huge record collection. Cordell had every record in the world in his office, and we'd meet there every day at 6. And he'd say, you ever hear Lloyd Price? No, check this out, Larry Williams, no, play, and he'd play all this stuff to me. And my songs got better, but by the time we made our first album as the Heartbreakers, there was nothing in the demo tape that even got recorded, And if I heard it now, I'm sure it'd be embarrassing. I mean, the songs weren't as good, as they needed to be, but we had the talent and we had the will to do it, but we weren't ready yet. If I had, say, signed with Capitol Records, I think we'd have made one sort of semi-good record and been dropped, and I'd have been back in Gainesville, trying to figure out what went wrong.
Stick with me on the confidence thing for a second, though, because this fierce confidence is really interesting. I mean, no one, at least I've tried to research, no one calls you a jerk, but you have been tough with people at times, even friends of yours over the years, and you've got this confidence. I'm thinking of, for example, Del Shannon, who you're producing, and you end up stealing away his bass player, and who becomes one of the Heartbreakers, and it takes a cocky guy to do that, and
No,
yet
I needed a bass player.
And yet you're also this humble guy, and who deflects attention at times. I've seen you interviewed, and people talk about you being great, and you sort of, tell me a bit about where the business confident Tom Petty fits in when it involves friendships and all that.
Well, I don't think I've really ruined any friendships to speak of. Del and I remained friends after that. And, well, I mean, in that instance, it was a better opportunity for Howie to come with us than to stay with Del, who was doing nostalgia shows in small places, and the band wasn't making very much, and it wasn't going to be a big deal to bring in another guy for Del, you know. Of course, I guess he could say the same thing about me, you know. But that's who I wanted, and he wanted to come, and that's what happened, you know. But, you know, I'm not really, I'm a pretty loyal friend, I think, to all my friends. But I can also, I guess, be pretty driven when there's something I want and something I want to get. I can be really driven to get it. I don't know, you know. I don't know really who I am or what I am. It's like you said. I mean, I did live the American dream. I am a complete recipient of that great gift. I've done an album about how that gift really isn't attainable anymore, and why, and what are the problems. You know, I'm more interested in why are we becoming less human? You know, why are we not maybe just as nice as we used to be? Or why is humanity, you know, human is leaving humanity? You know, I think that we've all got, in the future, it seems to me that, you know, technology is not going to stop. Like, you know, the floodgates have broke open with that, and that's good and that's bad. But it's what the challenge is going to be for humans is to keep up with that technology and maintain their humanity. You know, maintain.
You feel like we're becoming less human?
A little. I think we're getting a little distant from each other.
Does that make you sad?
Yeah. But I don't want to be the old guy screaming, hey, it used to be better. You know, it didn't necessarily used to be better. But you have to find that. What worries me now is I see more and more of that people that will do something for their own gain without really caring who it hurts. You know, I've never had that chip. You know, I would feel guilty if I was hurting someone by achieving this or that. We now have people, very wealthy people, you know, who really become obsessed with making more money that would never change a day of their lives, probably never change a day of their children's lives. This fascinates me, you know, that you see people that really can't get enough of that. And if they do get enough of the money thing, then they're bored with that and they want power. And then they seek power. And when they seek power, I mean, in the history of man, there's probably 9 or 10 people that knew how to handle power. You know, it's a very dangerous thing. So when they care less and less about whether they're going to hurt people, when they care less and less about bringing in a giant store that's going to wipe out every family business for miles, you know, and they justify it to themselves. How? You know, I don't understand that. Just the fact that there's people around them that will let them justify that.
But this isn't.
That's what
this is
worries
consistent
me.
with you, the way you have felt for years. I mean, you famously were the guy who, when other musicians would have capitulated, went after labels that you thought were doing, when you thought they were doing things unfairly.
Well,
and I wanted
you
to
know,
recast,
if they'd have listened to me.
well, they eventually did.
Well, when they were going out of business. But I mean, the truth was, you're taking this away from the average guy. Can't afford this anymore. I thought that in 1981.
Where did you get the strength for that, Tom? I mean,
I
it's
don't
one thing to talk
know.
about kind of
I was
confidence.
a cocky kid. I don't know, where I got the strength for that. I think I felt like what did I have to lose? Nothing. I just thought, well, God, it's hard to remember what you thought that long ago. But I think I thought, well, I'll do this and everyone will fall in behind me. Well, no one fell in at all. I never saw one person, one artist that said, "Hey, good going." I'm going to do that. Nobody did. But it's not really a period of time I look back on fondly. I don't know that I achieved anything there. I may have kept $1 off the retail price for a while, but they jacked it back up.
Although prices have fallen now, and I was wondering if you feel somehow gratified that music is democratized somehow now in terms of.
I'm not gratified that it's free, because I don't think that's fair to the artists. I think, there are artists far less fortunate than me that make their living doing that, and I think it's a slap in the face to them to think that you can take their work for free. I would think that of any profession, But, then I just, this is the thought in my mind as I write songs these days, is that we are going to have to care about each other to a bigger degree than we are now. This is the vanishing of the middle class, because you have people on top whose consciences have eroded, and you have people around those people who support it.
You said a few moments ago that you were a romantic, and that a lot of that's been beaten out of you. In what ways do you feel like you are still a romantic?
I don't know. I've always loved the underdog that somehow finishes the race. I still believe that people are pretty magnificent things, and I think given the shot, given the encouragement, they can do great things. I think but if you take every bit of education away from them, every bit of, just a fair shake, it's not. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people watching this can realize remember a time. I grew up in a neighborhood where no one was wealthy. There were no swimming pools or anything, but people that were relatively hard workers that showed up and went to work every day, they could afford a family. They could feed their family, and they might even own a house, But that kind of thing is gone now.
You've said a couple of times that new is important.
Yes.
And that you want to keep getting better. The whole band is committed to that, to doing something better than before. That fuels you. How does Tom Petty measure success now? What would success on this record mean to you?
Well, if people could hear it, would be really successful. It's so hard to get heard if you're a rock and roll band. There's not really a platform for it anymore. So if people just knew about it and could hear it and wanted to buy it, that would be very successful to me. One doesn't really expect to sell great numbers of records these days. It's not the same. But I still think you need to make them, and the people still need them. And hopefully I can make good ones. If I'm not making good ones, there's really no reason to buy another Tom Petty record. You've got, quite a few already. But if I can make one that you know, is you want to go get, then I've done my job, and that's.
You feel like you've made one with this?
I do with this. I think this is a pretty accessible record. You know, say a record like Mojo, I really loved. I didn't expect it to be greeted by all. You know, I thought it was a little bit in a particular area of music, but that's not going to stop me from doing that either. You know, you're not if like Elliot Roberts, like, who was our, you know, I'm sure you know Elliot, was
Your
a
longtime manager for a while, yeah.
Yeah, he told me like we were just working on our third album, Damn the Torpedoes, and he gave me some very good advice, you know, and he said, listen, this record may be a huge hit record for you, but every record you make is not going to be bigger than the one before. He said the secret is that every record you make be quality music. And sometimes you'll see one go to the top, and sometimes you won't, but nobody will ever say, hey, that wasn't any good, you know? And I took that to heart, that look, I'm gonna do an honest job here, I'm gonna try to make some good music. Sometimes, you know, you succeed, sometimes you fail, but everything's managed to stay above water, you know, and now and then you do get that really nice one that, you know, is a huge hit and crosses over. But that can't be all that you're interested in. You've got to try to just do quality work and please yourself as best you can. And I think I'm probably my harshest critic, you know. I'm still pretty hard on what I'm doing, and that works to my advantage in a way.
Final question to you. If the career of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is a book, what chapter are we in?
It's a really big one.
A huge book. What chapter are we in now?
Well, we're sure not in the middle. I'd say we're nearing the end. I mean, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen, do you? I mean, like, you might have to add quite a few chapters. You never know. I'm not ready. I don't want to quit, you know. If I quit and if I retired, I'd be like, well, now what do I do? You mean I can't go hang with the guys and hang around the amplifiers and stuff and get new tubes and, you know, all these things that, I mean, my life is really, it's very simple, you know. I'm in a studio and we might spend an afternoon plugging in a pedal or wondering why this kind of tube makes a different sound than this one, or, you know, or I'm writing, or I'm traveling. Traveling, I've had enough of, you know. I'm not nuts about that, but I love to play. I love it when we all walk out and start to play. So I'm not ready to say that it's time to close the book. And I'm just grateful that I can still make a reasonable showing. You know, I can still make a reasonable showing, and I'm just lucky to be here, glad to be here.
Tom Petty, it's been an utter pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Very
for this,
nice.
sir.
Yeah.